fuck? What I do? And I had to
Well,
go down to
I remember. I
City
think it
Hall.
was like Phish Tour 2011. Was like getting ready to go down to Hershey and then doing like Hartford or whatever, and went on to book a car, and it wouldn't let me, and then I realized that my driver's license had expired, and I was like, oh shit.
Living in New York, it happens.
Yeah. So every 10 years, I guess, or whatever. Yeah, 2011 was probably, or maybe it was earlier than that, but yeah. How's your wife? You
She's
guys
good.
ready?
We're
Yeah?
ready.
Awesome.
We're getting there. We're
in countdown mode.
we're in countdown mode.
4 minutes, guys.
Cool.
4 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, cool. Yeah, we're in countdown mode. If you ask my wife, the baby could come tomorrow. But I think we have a little bit of time. But yeah, we got basically cleaned out the apartment and got a lot of room out and stuff. And
Nice.
yeah, we'll see. We'll see. Yeah, it could be any time. Hopefully not till after I get back from Bonnaroo, but
Oh yeah.
we'll see.
What happens?
No, I think sure. I mean, she's due July 18th, so that would
Okay.
have to be like 5 weeks early.
Yeah.
All right, happy Memorial Day, everyone. My name is Mike Greenhaus. I'm one of the editors here at Relix. I'm here with my friend Andy, who wrote this great book, 100 Things Phish Fans Should Know and Do Before They Die, which I think is actually one of the better Phish books. Not only has come out, but it's been a couple years since we've had a great Phish book out here. So give us a little background on when you and Jason started kind of working on this project.
Yeah, sure. Thanks for having me, Mike.
Yeah, of
and
course.
the team here is awesome at Relix. It's kind of feels can feel the history in this space, which is really exciting. And
so
I wish
think it's just dirty here. Yeah.
yeah, there's
Cluttered.
like sort of roadie vibes. No, it feels really good in here, and excited to talk about the book. I wish my co-author Jason Gershony could be here also, but he's out in Portland, Oregon at the moment. The project was an incredible experience. The publisher Triumph Books, based in Chicago, has had a lot of success with this 100 Things series. 100 Things Star Wars, 100 Things Game of Thrones, and then they wanted to do 100 Things Phish. And so initially they reached out to Jason, who is a prolific writer in his own right, but also a working professional and has a toddler. And so he ended up reaching out to Scotty B at Jambase and Yemblog, who recommended me, and Jason and I partnered up and wrote a 90,000 word Phish book.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it was a really fun experience, and it was really fast turnaround also, and the guys at Triumph were really great, and we were able to put in a lot of photos and illustrations, and I'd say the most challenging element of it all was coming up with that initial list of 100 things. Jason and I sort of sharing Google spreadsheets and prioritizing things and combining things and separating things, obviously looking at historic New Year's Eve runs and historic Halloween runs, and how do we break those down. There's a chapter on each of the studio albums, and more. Really, it was kind of the hardest part, I think, was sort of creating that initial list and then chopping it down.
Right. Well, as mentioned before, there's been a lot of books written about Phish over the years, but it's been a little while since we've had such a comprehensive book that kind of goes all the way through to the most recent Phish show. This last New Year's show. Given that we're now deep into the 3.0 era, did you guys try to weight the different periods of Phish equally? Do you try to put more focus on the more modern stuff that hasn't been kind of canalized yet?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, with the 35-year history of the band, it's sort of, we could have written multiple books. Each era could have been its own book its own, in a way. Jason's more prolific era of seeing Phish was 1.0, and mine was 2.0, and now since 3.0 as well. I think that, kind of like to your point, there is a lot of material out there about the early years of Phish. And so it was really exciting to dive into some of the newer rituals and traditions. The Baker's Dozen is the lengthiest chapter. It's chapter 13. And we speak a lot about the sort of 3.0 tradition of Dick's and all the antics at Dick's. And then, the most recent New Year's Eve shows we were able to plug in at the last minute before the book went to print. And for me, it's is really interesting to dive into those annals and sort of read about what has already been said about early days of Phish and sort of the more historical, sort of factual elements of the early shows and early band members, and sort of how this foursome came together as what they are now. And I'm biased to the shows that I've been to, of course, but I think that whether you're an old vet or you're just getting turned on to the band, I think that there's something in there for both people.
Right. I love the kind of the old school Phish and Grateful Dead books and Widespread Panic as well, because those books really were the gateway for a lot of people like myself into that music. It's hard to jump into the music without a little bit of a guidebook or a trail, and they were definitely that guidebook for me. And I think this book will be a guidebook for a lot of people getting into the band or kind of looking to dig a little deeper. What were some of the Phish books that first helped you discover the band and learn a little bit about the lore that it sounded was around them?
Obviously the Phish book. I remember my parents gave it to me for Christmas, and just home for the holidays, just devoured it. And it's a beautiful book anyway. I also really enjoyed the fishing manual. Sort of tackles some of the lexicon of the culture and the scene.
Written by Dean Budnick.
Yep.
The other editor-in-chief at Relix.
Yep,
here.
exactly. Shout out to Dean. I think, like you, I mean, I think there is a lot of lore and a lot of history and a lot of nuance that, we've spoken about how the more you invest in it, the more you're rewarded. And that's not to say that you can't go into a Phish show knowing nothing and not have a great time. I've taken a lot of people to their first Phish shows.
Yeah.
But I think that there is so much there that it is nice to sort of have an easy entry into it. And part of the way that we structured the book was you can certainly read it cover to cover, but you can also just jump in at any chapter. If you want to read about Tweezer, hit the Tweezer chapter. You want to read about Yem, there's a chapter on Yem. And I think that, having it structured like that, I hope, is entertaining and interesting and a low barrier to entry for folks who maybe aren't as familiar with the band.
Right, well, I guess, besides obviously having Baker's Dozen be the 13th entry, what was the conversation like, ordering from 1 to 100? Because, as you said, it's not chronological and it's not necessarily in order of, say, the most important things that happened to Phish.
Yeah, I mean, that was, we had a lot of lengthy discussions about the order of the book because traditionally with the 100 Things series at Triumph, they're either chronological or there is a distinct hierarchy. And we kind of walked between those two worlds. There is a lot of earlier stuff up front and more nuanced stuff at the end. But again, Baker's Dozen is chapter 13. And we thought that was appropriate.
Right, yeah.
I think that we wanted to sort of start broader, but also hit the more important highlights early on. The chapter on Phish and the Dead, we felt was super important, but obviously didn't want to front load it. And just sort of as the book kind of came together at the end, a few swaps and some movement here and there, and we added in another chapter at the last minute and made it work. But also we'll be taking questions. So if anybody has any questions, to leave in the comments, and we could get more into the nuance of the chapters and stuff like that.
Right. Yeah. It's interesting. Mentioned like a chapter on Phish and the Dead. No, that's something that on early Phish books probably wouldn't have been documented because there was not as much crossover. Maybe some of the ones that came out around 99, 2000, we talked about that initial Phil and Friends show and stuff. But now there's a kind of a whole universe that's emerged from all the members of the band playing with the members of the Grateful Dead over the years. Yeah,
absolutely. And even certain pull quotes and such from Trey's interview on Charlie Rose. Right. That stuff that happened post 90s that some of those early books just were out before that happened. And we were able to sort of look at that picture from a broader perspective and kind of pull and choose different quotes and elements to then kind of flesh it out a little bit.
Now, it's Memorial Day week, and that kind of kicks off the height of festival season, which is now a full year thing. And, the Modern Festival really does go back to Phish and their festivals that they did in the late 90s, and they kind of set the benchmark and really kind of ushered in this modern era of festivals. And you dig in deep on all of those festivals, researching those and collecting them for the book. Were there certain kind of themes that you found that united them and you could kind of point to in kind of the modern festival world, whether it was the art or some of the late night kind of shenanigans that have come to define them?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, I think, without a doubt, Phish certainly pioneered, the festival that we know of as today. Certainly throughout the 60s, there were massive festivals as well. But to have a band, who's been playing for, 10 or 15 years to set up an entire city, in the middle of nowhere with 60,000 people caravanning and camping for a long weekend, is really something.
Yeah.
And in some of the early festivals, sure, they had side stages and supporting acts and such, but, for what we've come to expect from Phish at a Phish festival, I think is still truly unique in regards to sort of those like after hours antics. You know that there's going to be some element of surprise. I think having a sort of, you know, a thematic element to it, whether it's the Festival 8 and having that acoustic set with donuts and coffee. I mean, there's a lot that the band has done for the fans, you know, who've made these pilgrimages over and over and over again sometimes. And, you know, roughing it in tent camping and now, you know, sort of offering more VIP options for people who perhaps like myself are a little bit older. And, you know, but I think that I think what Phish, you know, festival legacy in many ways will be first and foremost about the fans, and ensuring that that it is a memorable and unique and experience beyond, say, you know, Bonnaroo's coming up really soon, and I think that, you know, my experience at Gov Ball or Panorama or any of these other sort of larger festivals that have multiple headliners and multiple bands, and that, you know, in some instances you get people who go to the festivals just for the sake of going to a festival, and maybe they're not even that interested in any of the performers. They just want to party. And you don't really see that at Phish, you know. I mean, people are going for the music, and Phish recognizes that, and I think rewards people for that big time.
Now, though they're not official festivals, there are kind of these venues that are known for their multi-night runs and almost have a festival lore to them. You mentioned Dick's before. What are some of the other venues you guys called out in the 100 list?
The Gorge is by far my favorite venue I've ever been to, and I think that the Gorge is a unique experience as well. And, you know, for them to do a 3-night run at the Gorge is super exciting. I saw my first Phish show at the Gorge, and, you know, also fall tour with the Hampton run. I mean, returning to the mothership. I mean, that's major. That's huge. You know, I think that, you know, just the geography of that area, this, you know, Coliseum, the one main strip of hotels, and just creates just an incredible atmosphere. And the same with Dick's. I mean, the shakedown street at Dick's it can't be beat. You know. It's a place for people to come together and share, you know.
You know, interesting you mentioned those 3 venues, and I think another common factor besides the kind of area around the venues, they're all general admission venues. So it does kind of create that open experience. You could sit with your friends, you could wander around a little bit more. You're not stuck in, you know, an aisle somewhere. It kind of allows you to have that, I guess, more communal experience that you were alluding to before.
Totally. And, you know, there is a chapter on I interviewed Brando Rich at Cash or Trade, and we've had lengthy conversations around just that, the community aspect of a GA show versus these, you know, strictly ticketed shows. I think, you know, you agree with me that maybe 5-10 years ago, it wasn't really a big deal if you were in somebody's seat or somebody was in your seat. You know, everybody just kind of made it happen and made it work. But unfortunately, these days, it's become a bit more challenging, and I totally can understand somebody coming in and having bought a ticket for hundreds of dollars, and they want to sit in their seat, you know. But I think whenever the band has the opportunity to do these GA venues, I think, I mean, you're going into it already with a much more relaxed communal vibe. And hopefully less stress and tension around sitting.
Definitely. And you know, you were nice enough to ask me to contribute to this book, and I'm proud to be part of it. And who are some of the other people that have their voices here, either writing things or kind of giving some quotes and telling their story? Yeah,
well, I mean, I loved your foreword. I thought it was very heartfelt and really, really great read, and a really great way to sort of introduce the book. We're super excited to have you on board. And I mentioned Brando Rich, Andy Bernstein, who's
he's that way.
Right? Oh, he's over that way. Okay. Andy Bernstein has a couple of quotes in the Phish and Politics chapter. I had interviewed a couple of shakedown vendors.
Nice, yeah.
You know, there's a chapter on sort of a virtual walkthrough shakedown, and then there is a chapter that is what we call lot economics, 1 for 3, 2 for 5, and sort of speaking to.
Is that still the price point these days?
Well, I mean, that chapter kind of explores that a lot. You know, I mean, I think that there is a really interesting economics to shakedown where it's not exactly as clear cut as supply and demand. And then you have these crazy outliers like Heady Topper that people will pay $10 or $15 a can for. And, you know, some people finance their entire summer tour doing that. I mean, you know, 15 years ago, I was selling beer and cigarettes on lot to pay for gas money in hotels. And now I'm selling a book.
Awesome. Well, I guess speaking of the community, I think we have some time for some questions.
Hey guys, Alex Trostorf mentioned that fall tour pre-sale ended today. Another big part of Phish is their Halloween legacy, returning to the MGM Grand this year. You guys talk a little bit about, you know, Phish's Halloween legacy and also maybe some anticipation for this year?
I think it's exciting that, you know, it's 20 years since Loaded.
Yeah. I mean, you know, you could look at some of the album finalists from like Festival 8, for example, and, you know, maybe they're front runners, maybe they're not. I think we could look at a lot of the covers from the Baker's Dozen run, and, you know, some of those covers, those guys are pretty excited to be playing, and you know, a lot of those bands are pretty prolific and have incredible albums. You know, I think that again, Halloween is just this ritual and spectacle that is, again, wholly unique to the Phish experience of them, you know, absorbing and then releasing an album by another artist, you know, and making it a true experience to that album, but also making it a Phish experience as well. Thrilling Chilling, I think, is one of the most incredible performances that I've ever seen, really.
Yeah.
Just, you know, completely out of left field, completely unexpected. I think, you know, some people were very excited for the wingsuit show, and some people less so. But you know, you'll get something surprising, and there aren't a lot of bands that can do that, you know.
Yeah, and these days at least, it's, you know, somewhat rare to have a festival and a Halloween set the same year. So we'll see if there's any solar clip moments there of, you know, kind of a style or a prank that kind of continues between the two of them.
Oh, that's exciting. Yeah.
Cool. I know there's a lot of artwork in the books. Andy, can you talk a little bit about the artists that you had contribute to this?
Sure. Yeah. So one of the most prolific photographers in the book is this man named Stephen Olker. He has these beautiful photos of the Baker's Dozen, of the Gorge, of Dick's and Shakedown Street. My co-author Jason Gerchny also contributed a number of great photos, including the this back cover photo, which is all of Jason's collected ephemera and tickets over the years. All of that is his own collection, which we were both really excited to include in the book. And then we also did an open call for photography through my website, fansite.com, where readers submitted literally hundreds of photos for consideration in the book. And unfortunately, we were only able to choose a few, but those that we did choose, I thought were extremely well. They captured a very particular, specific moment of Phish. You know, the boardwalk at the festivals, for example. And then I have friends who are illustrators, and so we were able to recruit a couple of them to do really fun sort of abstract or not illustrations, illustration for Scoring a Miracle Ticket, an illustration of the guys jumping on trampolines for the Yem chapter, and it was just a nice way, I thought, to include some of these other elements of Phish. You know, I mean, so many fans make their own art. So many fans share photos of the shows and their experiences on the road. And so I felt like it was important to include that in the book. Yeah.
Absolutely. Travis Parmenter says he pre-ordered the book and he can't wait to get it. So shout out to Travis. Also, veering back into the world of speculation, John Costello wanted to know if you guys had any 2 cents on another studio album from the band. Maybe, there's a lot of new material being thrown around. If you guys had any thoughts on that.
Mike, do you know something that we don't
I don't know anything, but there has been a lot of new material, both, new Phish songs over the years, as well as new material from the solo projects that sometimes these days trickle into the albums or into the Phish sets and then the albums. So, it's every couple of years they seem to have one out. So I guess we're veering towards next time. But I don't know anything more than anyone else.
Yeah, nobody's mentioned it to me yet.
Yeah.
But would love a new studio album, of course. I think that one of the greatest things, like to your point, Mike, that they're constantly putting out new material, and whether they're actually recording it and releasing it or just performing it, kudos.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm just wrapping things up, guys. You mentioned, Andy, that the festival legacy for Phish is really all about the fans. Can you kind of talk a little bit more about the community around Phish, and also if you happen to use any fan testimonials in the book?
Sure. Yeah. As I mentioned, sort of interviewing some of the lot vendors, they can kind of attest to their experience on the road, and I think that that sort of that element of being a Phish fan, meaning traveling for the shows, hitting consecutive shows, going to Vegas for 4 nights. I think that in and of itself creates a community of, you're seeing the same people over and over again. I can remember, leading up to Coventry, I didn't have a cell phone, and my friends and I were just seeing each other at every show, and then Coventry came and went, and unfortunately lost touch with a lot of people, but have since reconnected with a few people on Facebook. There's so many great Phish groups now. It's easy to sort of stay connected digitally, easier than it was, certainly. But I think just that sort of how prolific the band's tours are, these multiple night runs, I think it really creates both a vacation opportunity, but also perhaps even like a lifestyle opportunity. They're certainly not touring as relentlessly as they were, but there's still plenty of opportunity to hit the road all summer and, caravan and, sell your wares, whatever they might be, and enjoy the experience beyond the 3 hours that the band is performing. Yeah. I do want to plug the events also. Yes. We're having the book comes out on Friday, as you know. We're having a release party at Brooklyn Bowl on Friday night here in New York with Dead Phish Orchestra performing 2 live sets. And then on Saturday, June 2nd, my co-author Jason Gershony is hosting a release party in Portland, Oregon at the Imperial Bar and Tap Room. And that's from 3 to 6 p.m. in the afternoon for everybody on the West Coast. And then on June 22nd, I'll be in Burlington, Vermont with the kind folks at Cash or Trade, hosting an event at the Skinny Pancake with the band Formula 5 performing live as well. And then we're going to have a raffle and some trivia, and we're really excited to meet with the fans and share the book and kind of getting our events in June out before everybody hits the road for the summer, which I hope to be at a bunch of shows this summer and hopefully connecting with more fans there, probably doing some impromptu ad hoc hotel lounge bar events, maybe hawking it on lot, but probably not. But all the details for the event and all the retailers for the book are online at 100things.com, 100thingsphish.com.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Andy. We'll see you on the road.
My pleasure. Thanks, Mike.